Emory Hunt and John Breech in with reaction there and across the league. Fellas, let's start right there in KC. Deferred discipline here for Rice. Emory, when you look at the flow of the schedule for KC, it's not necessarily front or back loaded, but is a potential suspension something you'd rather get out of the way? Or do you really look at those early matchups and kick that can down the road if you can?
Definitely kick that can down the road, guys, because at the end of the day, we know how competitive and how tight the AFC is going to be from start to finish. You're talking about Baltimore potentially being a #1 seed, Buffalo being a potential #1 seed, and if Cincinnati can figure out defense, they'll be considered a #1 seed. Houston has a chance with their defense, so the AFC is super competitive. So anytime you get a chance to go a leg up on some AFC opponents like the Chargers and Ravens, you got to do it because you never know toward the back end of the season. Like, man, if we would have won one more game in the AFC, we'd be the #1 seed. I think that's why it's so important for him to be out there for those first 4 games.
Yeah, I think my big question here is, does anybody at the NFL have a calendar? Do they know that there is still 4 weeks to go before the season starts? You couldn't get the disciplinary hearing in before week 1 because this really sets up an interesting scenario. And as Emory just kind of alluded to, I agree with him. If you're the Chiefs, you are not disappointed that this hearing is not going to be until September 30th because the first 4 games are absolutely loaded. You're playing 3 teams that made the postseason last year. The Baltimore Ravens are there. A Super Bowl rematch with the Eagles. You got to fly down to Brazil to take on the Chargers. Now you're going to have Rice for all 4 of those games. And then you look at a possible, let's say, 3 to 5 game suspension after September 30th. Well, you have a primetime game in Jacksonville, which is winnable. And then you have 3 straight home games. Well, you know what the Chiefs did last year? They went 8-0 at home. And Rashee Rice missed 12 games last season with a knee injury. So this offense knows it can function without him. They're going to have a rejuvenated Travis Kelce. You have Hollywood Brown. You have Xavier Worthy. So I do think the Chiefs will be okay no matter where this falls. But I do think they are also not disappointed that it might fall in the middle of the season and not at the beginning.
It's like when Congress goes into recess. There's no business to be done, John, until the 30th. We'll see what it is for Rice moving forward. That's the off-field. Let's get to some of the on-field here. Joe Milton set to start Saturday's preseason game against the Ravens for the Cowboys. John, we know the arm talent. It's certainly undeniable, but other questions remain for what's listed as the Cowboys' backup. What are you hoping to learn about Joe Milton here in this preseason action?
Well, look, Joe Milton's going in there. He's learning a new offense, and I think what Brian Schottenheimer wants to see is that he has a good grasp of this offense because we know that Joe Milton is an electrifying talent, but he's a raw talent. So it's can you develop him and make him an adequate to good backup quarterback in the NFL? If you're the Dallas Cowboys, if Dak Prescott goes down, do you trust handing the keys to the offense over to Joe Milton? So I do think he is on the right trajectory. He's probably not starting material right now, but we saw him start a game for the Patriots last season in that finale and played pretty well. We saw him in a preseason game against the Rams over the weekend. Once again, threw the ball pretty well. So if he can get his accuracy under control, I think he could be a good #2 guy in Dallas.
In order, a lot of times folks want to, I want exposure. Well, exposure can lead to being exposed. And the longer you're out there, it could be an issue. And I think for Joe Milton, it's more so about whether or not he could flatline his play. Like we saw him doing that one outing last season in the regular season in New England. But now you're trying to extrapolate that over the course of multiple preseason games. And if, knock on wood, it doesn't have to come to this, if he has to go out there for a regular season game, can you trust him to make those routine throws consistently? And that's what I want to see from him in this preseason game or games, because we'll see the wild throw, then we'll see a couple of inaccurate throws, then we'll see another wild throw, another wild run, then another couple of inaccurate throws. You want to see all of that just flatline, streamline. And if he can hit the short passes, then the intermediate throws, and then take the timely shot deep down the field, now you have something you could depend on week in, week out.
Looking for a little bit more consistency out of Milton. We're looking at Will Grier as the #3, likely to get some tick in that game as well. Certain franchises are electing to roll the starters out for game 2 of the preseason. Atlanta's keeping QB1 on ice still. No Michael Penix on Friday. Not a redshirt rookie, Emory, but these are live reps, and live reps are always beneficial. Would you like to see more out of the new main man?
I saw him fighting at practice. I'm sold. He's ready for the season. Count me in. I don't have to see him in no preseason game. But in all honesty, guys, when you're the starter and you're playing in these competitive joint practices, I think you do a lot of work there as opposed to what's necessary in the 2 series of a preseason game. Obviously, in the preseason game, you just want to see operation. You want to see how they get in and out of the huddle. You want to see how they get communication from the booth to the sideline to the huddle and how they go through checks and balances out there on the field at the line of scrimmage. But in terms of his play, man, these joint practices have been a godsend for these NFL teams because they're getting so much work in. It kind of eases the burden of these guys having to push them in the regular season, or I'm sorry, in the preseason in these games. So I'm fine with it. Although you want to see, because we're not privy to what they're doing at these joint practices throughout the course of the league, but we're seeing these guys do enough to where, hey, I can trust the coaching staff has a plan in place. These guys are getting a lot of work in, a lot of physical work in. The preseason game, yeah, you want to see them go out there, dress up, be for the fans and for, local TV. But at the end of the day, I'm fine with him not playing.
Yeah, Emory, you actually just made a case, though, why he should play also, because you mentioned 5 or 6 things there that teams are doing in the preseason, whether it's getting in and out of the huddle, getting plays in, getting the headset. You got that QB headset. Things that you can't really necessarily replicate in those joint practices. And so we've kind of seen a philosophical change with NFL coaches. I think we've seen more starting quarterbacks out there than probably in the last 10 years. Saw Joe Burrow out there taking snaps. Kyler Murray has taken some preseason snaps. Jordan Love, of course, that's not a good example because he got injured in his game. But coaches want to see their quarterbacks out there kind of get their offense gelling, build some chemistry. And so I am a little bit surprised that the Falcons are keeping Michael Penix Jr. on ice. He only has 3 starts in his career under his belt. So I don't think that live game reps can hurt him. I think the more reps you get can only help. So yes, these joint practices are important. That's why every team around the NFL does them. The head coach, everyone is going to learn a lot about what Michael Penix can do. But I do think there is something to be said for letting him play 1 or 2 possessions. So I'm a little bit surprised that the Falcons are not letting him do that during this year's preseason.
Yeah, myriad strategies for these starting quarterbacks and for Penix Jr. maybe in week 3. John Breech, Emory Hunt. We grow closer, fellas. Good to see you. Well, look here at Friday's preseason slate. You'll have Penix's Falcons without Penix going at it against the Titans, 7 Eastern time. The Chiefs and the Seahawks going to round out your night action in the Pacific Northwest.